Hey guys, my name is Katie. Welcome to Becoming. Today I have James with us. So James is just going to tell us a little bit about how he came to Christ and how his life is now. And I love James. I met James about 3 years ago at work, and we became good friends. And I just have so much love for him and his wife. And so I'm so thankful that you joined me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm blessed to be here. We were talking a little bit off camera about how this all started, and it's just an honor to be here. I watched the previous episode. I don't know where this is going to fall, but of your testimony, and it was really powerful. But also I guess it sets the stage, so maybe my testimony or my story or what I've got to say will be half as good as yours, I guess.
Oh, thank you, James.
But yeah, I don't know how you want to start it. I'm just me, pretty simple type of person. We can start at the beginning and kind of go from there.
Sure.
So I'm originally from Searcy, Georgia. It's a small town. Basically a caution light. We didn't even really have a solid red light until here recently, and even now it's only a red light from two sides, not the main road, But just growing up in a small town, I was around church all my life. That's the one thing that has for sure made that town, is for there to only be a population of about 200 people, there's 50 churches.
Yeah.
You could throw a rock from one and hit the other. And so I've always known about church. I've always known about Christ. But we were wild. So there's me and my brother. We had a middle brother, Shane. He passed away when he was a baby. Choked on a bouncy ball and passed away. And then shortly after that, here I was. I was very unplanned, to say the least. But once again, we grew up in a small town. Just me and my brother. We would always run around and act wild, and go fishing, do a lot of hunting on foot, barefoot. I was always surrounded by older cousins. Everybody around me's always been older. I was always the baby, and so I'd always get the brunt of everything, so to speak. And just had a great childhood overall up to probably 5th grade. I have horrible memory, so a lot of this is faded. A lot of it I can't really remember details on, so I'll just go with it, and we'll see. But I remember 5th grade for sure was kind of the turning point for me and my family. My mom and dad were having a lot of problems. We had a lot of death in the family from various things, and it turned into kind of a situation, or at least what it seems like now, is my parents thought they would fix their problems by moving. Let's get away from this town. Let's try to move and find different work. And
My parents were the same.
yeah, and so we packed up and we went from Searcy to Atlanta, and
Oh gosh.
we lived in it's Palmetto, Georgia, which is kind of on the outskirts, around like Sonoya and Noonan, Georgia, places like that. We lived in all of those, but anyways, we moved there. So imagine a 5th grader who their entire life has been Searcy, Georgia, which is the equivalent of like Nichols or something like that, to kind of familiarize you with it, or Enigma.
Yeah.
They go from that to Atlanta, and I've never been to any town bigger than Baxley, Georgia, which is wild. So we move up there, start going to school, and like I said, my parents are having problems, but they didn't really. They were very good at hiding it. Mm-hmm. Me and my brother didn't really see a whole lot of arguments in person or around us, but they were having issues. And it kind of got to where they were doing all they could to make it work. You know what I mean? So I start school in the middle school. We moved up there during the summer of my 5th grade year. And, left all my friends and everybody that I've always known. I went to this town that I knew nothing about anybody there, whatever. So started the school, and it's rough because I don't know anybody. I don't know how it's literally a complete change, like a culture shock, because I grew up in a small town. I went to a school where it's yes ma'am, no ma'am. There's a lot of southern hospitality, but also manners and discipline. They would paddle us, stuff like that. You leave from that school and go to a school where they're literally selling drugs at a desk side by side,
Yeah.
and the teacher's just sitting there, or the kids cussing out the teachers, and it's like, complete culture shock.
Yeah.
And so, being the wild child that I was, and I was already rebellious, I dove head first. Like, this is great. We can be wild here, and it's okay,
Yeah.
and we don't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yes. So, right off the bat, I started hanging out with all the wrong kids that you could possibly pick out of a lineup, and immediately start going downhill in the sense of I stopped doing classwork, stopped paying attention. I've always tried to make people laugh, so I immediately started making jokes, cutting a fool, and my grades started to really reflect that. Meanwhile, my parents, once again, they're trying all they can to hold this marriage together, as blinded as I was to it, and here I am making it even worse. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Hindsight's 20/20 is what they say. So grades start failing, start hanging around the wrong crowd, and next thing I know, because I've had older siblings around me my entire life, from about 5th to 6th grade, I started smoking cigarettes behind my mom and daddy's back. My mom and daddy were smokers. Their parents were smokers. Everybody smoked cigarettes. So it was just a thing. And so I would sneak cigarettes out the ashtray outside on my mom's porch, mom and daddy's porch, and I'd run and hide and smoke a cigarette, and it'd be just about a draw or two off of it, And we fast forward into now 6th grade. We're in a different town, and these kids are like getting whole packs of cigarettes, and I was like, buddy, we're in here. I've made it. I genuinely thought that whatever mom and daddy were doing, it's right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we were sneaking off. Me and my brother, we were going, and like late at night, my parents were rotating between working day shifts, and day shifts wasn't working out. I guess money wasn't good, so they were doing night shift. I mean, it was really sporadic, like crazy, And they were just once again trying to do everything they could to provide for us. And so me and my brother were living it up. And what I mean by that is we were hanging around with kids that their parents obviously didn't care either. Mm-hmm. We were roaming the streets at 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night. Now keep in mind, I'm in 6th and 7th grade.
Right.
Drinking a little bit, but not a lot of alcohol. It was mostly marijuana. First time I got introduced to a joint, I thought it was a cigarette. And
But that was a shock.
the guy that we were sitting with or hanging out with, he had an Xbox, and we were always kind of wasn't broke, but we struggled growing up. And so anybody that had a video game at their home like that, it was like, ooh, you got money.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there, and he was like, hey man, you want to hit this? And I was like, yeah. So I know what that is. As soon as he handed it to me, I'm like, man, this cigarette stinks. It kind of smells a little funny, So I hit it like I would a cigarette, and almost instantly, I thought I was dying. I'd never experienced anything like that, And I was like, man, is this like one of those Camel non-filters? I mean, like Jeepers crisp. This thing's spicy. It goes around rotation, it comes back, and I was like, but I don't know part of that. I'm good. And they were like, man, come on, bro. It's like, well, you ain't gonna talk to me like that. I'm gonna hit it again. Give it here, I ain't backing out. So I hit it a couple more times, and I didn't really feel anything the first time I smoked it. You know, I was a little tingly, whatever, you know, nothing major. But then we moved forward and playing the game and all. He rolls another one, you know. Started smoking again, and before it's all over with, this whole room smoked out. Keep in mind, we're in this guy's house. Him and my older brother are the same age, and me and my brother's 2 years apart. So he was, you know, 8th, 9th grade. And his aunt was raising him. I don't know his mom and daddy's story, but his aunt was raising him, and she was a bartender. And so when we got out of school, we'd go to his house. Because she wasn't there. She would already be at work, you know, and he was there by himself. So it was like, it's all bets are off, we're going over there.
Yeah.
You know, that's the party house. So we go over there basically every day after school. Smoke pot, play video games, eat up all their food. And this goes on for basically that entire first year we were there. And then progress reports come in. Now my dad is a very old school type of parent, very stern, very strict, strong believer in physical discipline. So when that progress report come in and it showed that I'd failed 6th grade, it wasn't a good time.
Yeah.
It was a time, it wasn't a good time. And my daddy beat me like I was basically a slave, I thought, you know, Kunta Kinte style.
Oh my God.
And it was not good. But I was informed then that I would have to retake 6th grade. And I was like, man, I'm dumb. You know, I'd never failed a grade. You know, I didn't always do well in school, but at least, you know, I didn't fail it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I had to take 6th grade over again, and so we stayed there in that little area that we were living in for my second go around 6th grade. And then finally at this point, you know, their marriage was basically it's about as thin as it could be. And I guess at some point they thought that they would separate. So we moved into a trailer park in Palmetto, Georgia. It's a little trailer park off of Exit on the interstate. And my dad moves into this house somewhere else on the other side of Atlanta, and I don't remember all of the details, but they essentially separated. And that was kind of like the nail in the coffin. They never got back together. It wasn't ever. But we moved into this trailer park, and that trailer park was littered with nothing but bad news. First time I ever smoked crack was in that trailer park in the 7th grade with a tattoo artist, quote unquote trailer park tattoo artist. Which, funny story, it just came to me. My brother's first tattoo, he was, I was 7th grade, so he was 9th grade. His first tattoo was on his back, and it was a rebel flag from this trailer park tattoo artist. And this guy, looking back, was the worst person you would ever want to be around with kids.
Yeah.
Just a shady individual, and hence the crack smoking. But anywho's, my brother in the 9th grade getting a tattoo, and he hid it from my mom for a long time. But it came to the point to where same thing, 7th grade I was struggling, because here I am in this trailer park surrounded by bad news. My mom and dad starting to fall apart. It's starting to get ugly, right? Like the separation starting to really show. And finally my dad, we come home from school, me and my brother one day, and my dad's there, and which was odd to begin with, because he wasn't there, you know, like they don't live together anymore.
Yeah.
And he sets us down, and he's like, listen, you know, guys, we've tried all we could try. Like it's to the point, like we're done. You know, me and your mama's done. Um, I'll always love y'all, just gave us the best, I guess, speech he could give us, given the situation, just trying to explain it to us. But what's crazy is I remember walking up, and it's always been this way for me in those type of situations. I remember walking up to the house, and I told my brother, because I saw my dad's Jeep in the driveway, I was like, something's wrong. We're about to find out something today. As we were walking up to hear about it,
Mm-hmm.
And so he gives us the speech. He tells us about it, And I was upset, but I didn't cry about it, like we had saw it, we saw y'all's marriage kind of, especially right here at the end, we saw it kind of falling apart. So seen it coming, of course, and my life changed when that happened. I went from being rebellious and skipping school and doing drugs at a trailer park tattoo artist's house, but it was rare, like out of 7 days, 6 of them I was in school, I was doing the right thing, but there was always that one wild day.
Mm-hmm.
But after that happened, when my mom and daddy and finding out about it, it was literally 7 days a week I was wild. I was getting to the point where I would get up every morning after that. I'd get dressed, I'd get my book bag, and I'd go down to the bus stop. And where we lived at, the bus, it was like a community, trailer park community, and there was cul-de-sacs at the end of them. And so the bus would just go to one cul-de-sac, pick up all the kids at one time. Made it simple.
Mm-hmm.
So I would walk to that cul-de-sac, and my mama would go to work, and we'd say, hey, all right, I'll let you boy. And as soon as I couldn't see her tail lights no more, I'd tear off running in the woods. And I would literally spend all day until the bus, I knew what time the bus was coming back through. So I would spend all day in the woods, walking to the gas station, like, just, and to kind of go back, that's what I did all my life. I was in the woods. Growing up in Searcy, you didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
You're in the woods, you're on dirt roads, fishing or hunting or whatever. So that's what I did. I waited on the bus, quote unquote, and then when Mama was gone, I'd slip off into the woods, and I wouldn't go to school.
Yeah.
Looking back, that was dumb because I didn't know that the school was like, hey, your kid didn't come to school today.
Yeah.
So it got to where I was, I would never go to school. When I did, I hated it. And then I remember it was a weekend. We had went to my buddy's house. We was hanging out playing video games and stuff. And his mom and daddy had kind of took me in pretty good. I think they had kind of somewhat caught on what was going on with Mama and Daddy. And so they kind of was like, hey, come over here and hang out, kind of, I guess, trying to alleviate the situation, you know what I mean? At least getting me and my brother away from it. And I remember coming home kind of early that evening, and my mama's bedroom door was locked, which was not uncommon. She would kind of lock herself in the room, and she'd come out after a while, she'd be all teary-eyed and upset, but you catch on pretty quick. Everybody was broken at that point.
Yeah.
So I remember coming home and the door was locked. So I banged on the bedroom door. There wasn't no supper cooked or nothing. I knocked on the door, banged on it pretty hard because she didn't answer the first couple knocks. And so I went, and I think at that time my dad's mama was living there. I remember going to her house, and I was like, hey, I was telling my grandma, I was like, I can't get Mama to open the door, Oh, she'll be fine, she's probably whatever, Well, after a while, my older brother comes over and he was like, hey, we need to call the ambulance, something's up, I don't think it got that in depth from what I can remember. I don't know if the ambulance came that time or not, but anyway, she had attempted to kill herself. And I think my brother busted the door in, and got in there to her. I mean, she wasn't as severely there, I guess you could say. And so I think my dad had come over, and he had kind of got involved, and everything just kind of laid low for a little while. Didn't go to school for a couple of days. And that was the first time that my mama tried to kill herself. And I didn't know at that time, you know, what was going on. I was still, you know, being wild in my rebellious stage and just kind of living life, you know, to the fullest, I thought. So we go on with life, everything, you know, doesn't get brought up. We don't talk about it, you know. Me and my brother don't talk about it. You know, there's no communication about anything. We just, it happened, whatever. So some time goes by and we end up moving again. Altogether, I changed 6 different schools in 2 years. So there was a lot of movement, and a lot of that was because of money and jobs and stuff like that for my family and all. But there was a time where my mother couldn't stay there any longer. She moved back what we would call home, which was, you know, Hazelhurst area. And ended up, you know, that's where I finished school and stuff like that. But she moved back, and I attempted to move back with her. I moved back. We stayed I finished my 7th grade year in Baxley, and then she moved over to Trailer Park right there in between Baxley and Hazelhurst and Graham, out by the lake, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. So in my 7th grade summer into 8th grade, I stayed there on the lake. You know, we'd hang out, me, my brother, all of his friends, which at that time, you know, were high school kids, and they were getting into everything that normal 9th and 10th graders were getting into, you know, experiencing life and stuff like that. And here I was, once again, the youngest of the group. I fall suit. You know, I'm going to do what they do. Smoking, drinking, you know, just being rebellious once again. And so I spend the majority of my summer at the lake. I love water. I love being out on the water. I love to fish. I love being outdoors, period. And during that time, still not doing well in school, still kind of somewhat getting in trouble. At this point, I'm basically a full-fledged smoker. Like it's to the point where, like, my mom would go to sleep, I'd be taking cigarettes out of her pack, you know, and then I'd go out on the back porch and smoke them while she's asleep. And so it just full-blown out there. And at this point, I hadn't really talked to my dad a whole lot. He was kind of doing his own thing. And the divorce got ugly. And like I said, my mom had already tried to kill herself one time. And so I remember I went to my cousin's house. She's an older cousin. She's since passed. And we were staying the night with her, and her kids are my age. So we were all just hanging out. You know, I'd been gone in Atlanta for, you know, some time, and finally got to come back. So I was visiting. I remember getting a phone call. Well, my cousin got a phone call, and it was from my other cousin. She was like, "Hey, you know, he needs to go home. You know, come to the house, take him home." And whenever we got there, the ambulance was there. And at this point, that's when my mother tried to kill herself the second time. And so we kind of go back and forth. And at that, like I said, at that point, she had tried to kill herself. So the family kind of stepped in to take over for me and my brother. You know, my brother's older at this point. He's got his learner's license, and we're like, "Hey, we're okay. You know, we're good. We'll go stay with you, and then if she's clear or whatever, if she's good, then, you know, we'll go back home." And so we did. You know, we hung out, and whenever she got situated with the ambulance in the hospital and all, we go back home to her. Once again, we don't talk about it, we don't discuss it, you know. And life goes on kind of normal, and what I would call normal. My mom's drawing, you know, unemployment or for EBT or something like that, and, you know, just kind of getting by, you know. Mm-hmm. Hadn't heard from my dad. I was still talking to my grandmother, which is my dad's mama. and just life was normal. I was going to school, coming home, acting wild, hitting the lake. And, it was okay. And moving into getting close to the beginning of my 8th grade year, my mom was trying everything she could. There were way too many nights where there wasn't anything to eat. You'd open up the refrigerator and there'd be like baking soda in there, It's like, but I don't know if you can eat that, but it's getting tempted. This is the 3rd day.
Yeah.
And we had awesome neighbors that lived across the street from us, and their kids were about mine and my brother's age, and we'd go over and hang out with them. And while we were there, they, as an adult now, you learn a lot about your neighbors just by living next to them, right? Whether you talk to them or not, you learn a lot about them. Mm-hmm. And I could tell now, looking back, like they knew something was up. And so every time we went over there, they would always offer to feed us and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like they never come out and said, like, look, I know y'all are hungry.
But they were there.
But they were there, yeah. Like they would offer to feed us and give us snacks and stuff like that. And we'd hang out with them all the time. It was really, really great people. And so there was a lot of times where there wasn't a whole lot to eat. And so at the start of the 8th grade, I remember my mama would go out during this phase. She was trying, I guess, she was trying to start over. My dad got together very young, had children very young. She didn't know anybody else other than my dad as far as love, relationship, etc. They were together 17 years prior to their divorce. So that's all she knew, all he knew. So she was trying to move on from my dad, I guess. So she would go to the club. And the issue that I see now looking back, which she was just doing her best, But me and my brother would be left at home sometimes. She'd leave out on Thursday and she wouldn't come back till Sunday or Monday. Mm-hmm. So it was just me and my brother there, once again, like this is 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade for me. So, and then my brother, he's 2 years older than me. So, he's 10th grade at the oldest, 11th grade, maybe. No, 10th grade. So here we are for 4 days, no real food, and just kids, trying to take care of each other. And I remember one evening, I'd come home and I can't remember, I think my brother was staying at a friend's house. He was up the road, and my mama was home, and same thing. It was a situation where she tried to kill herself. My mama was a cutter, so she would, basically get in the bathtub and cut herself, and that was the final straw. I found her, and at that point it was, enough was enough. My dad had come down, he had got involved, which was the first time really he had kind of come around or been around, and so she gets sent off. Well, while she's sent off, we're kind of bouncing around from house to house, and I remember visiting her at the place that she was sent to, and we brought her some socks and stuff like that, but you couldn't really take her anything because, she was on a watch list.
Yeah.
And so we went and visited her, and she got out of that place kind of to speed along, I guess, and we had once again went back to normal life, just living at the house. And I went and visited my dad for like 2 weeks or a week. And when I came back, my mama had packed all my stuff neatly in the middle of the bedroom. And that was kind of her way of kicking me out. Me and her had always butted heads, especially after divorce. Because I look like my dad. I've always been told that my whole life. And because of that, there was a lot of anger there, a lot of resentment. Not towards me necessarily, but just to him, and because I looked like him, I took the brunt of it. And so she kicks me out, basically. Once again, we butted heads a lot. I moved in with my dad. So I start 8th grade in Atlanta again. So here I am back up in Atlanta. Same thing. It's in Gwinnett County now. So Gwinnett's a lot of crime. There's a lot of drugs involved, especially in the area that I went to school at. So I never claimed to be addicted to anything other than cigarettes and alcohol. But I smoked a lot of pot. Some would probably say an addiction worthy amount of pot. But it was all throughout my childhood, basically. And I'm bouncing around a lot on that as far as the time frame goes, because like I said, a lot of my memory is hazy. I remember a lot of specific times, but I don't remember like the time frames and how it's laid out. But I do remember when we moved back up, like I said, and went right back to smoking pot real heavy. And I wasn't drinking, I was just smoking pot. And we'd sneak out, me and my brother. At this point, he's getting into his junior, senior year of high school. He's basically grown at this point. He's got a job, he's got a vehicle, he's doing his own thing, he's hanging out with his own friends, and he's starting to slowly develop an alcohol problem. And I'm kind of following suit, but I don't really know it yet at this point. And so I remember during all of this stuff, everything that's going on, we had several people, but mainly my great grandmother. And my great grandmother, we called her Shug. Her name was Elizabeth. She was the glue to the family. But at that point, she was one of the most religious people I'd ever met at that point. And so she would always tell me, baby, it'll be better, And she would always tell me about the Lord and stuff. And, I ain't listening. Mm-hmm. She would tell me, but, my ears was waxed over. And I remember she was getting to where she couldn't really quite take care of herself fully. She was getting on up in age, so my grandmother, which is my dad's mama, she was starting to frequent a lot to go get her, and her stay with my grandmother and all. During that time, me and my dad had a falling out, and so I moved in with her. Well, it was very brief because my dad had this thing to where while I was in school, I had to either live with him or live with my mama. Well, I couldn't live with him because me and him had just had a falling out. So I get kicked out of my grandmother's house by him to go live with my mom. Okay, so I did it. I finished 8th grade. In the summer of 8th grade, I moved back down there. But this time my mom was living in Hazelhurst, so I moved to Hazelhurst School. And I ended up, like I said, I graduated in Jeff Davis and met a lot of great people, a lot of good friends. But my mother ends up finding my stepdaddy now. They were dating at the time. And I think my senior year ended up getting married. And things just kind of flowed into that state. But this whole time I'm smoking and drinking. I really picked up drinking pretty heavy my senior year, and officially started smoking heavy, 2 packs a day my senior year. So I had a job, and I'd go to school, and then I went to tech school my senior year. So I did the dual enrollment thing, and I figured I didn't have the knowledge or the educational level to be a doctor or a lawyer. I ain't got a strong mind, but I got a strong back, so I might as well get ready to go to work. And so I jump ahead here, but my sophomore year. Played football my freshman and my sophomore year. My sophomore year, August the 2nd, I'll never forget it. August the 2nd, we're practicing. And we go to do a tackle. Me and this guy, very good friends with, he's moving off. He got his own life anyways. And it's a helmet-to-helmet contact. And as soon as we hit, my head swings back and I felt a pop. And I didn't really think about it, but it hurt. So I get up from the tackle and I go to get back in line, and the whole time, my whole body just feels like, felt like licking a 9-volt battery. Is the best way to explain it. Mm-hmm. Like my fingernails even felt weird. Like it was almost like a sense of kind of like your leg goes to sleep, but it's literally from your neck down. Mm-hmm. So I walk over to the trainer and I'm like, hey, my neck hurts and something don't feel right. So she tells me to put an ice pack on my neck, kind of sit down and kind of just, let's see if it's pulled muscle or something like that. And she tells me to put my ears to my shoulder, and look up and down. She pushes down on my head and stuff like that, just trying to see if possibly it's pulled muscle. No. So she gives me this ice pack. She's like, well, here, just set it out and just kind of see where we go. Well, the longer I sit there, the worse it gets. Like it's at this point, after a couple of minutes, I'm sitting there and I'm like, my body's on fire and my neck is it hurts a lot. So I walk back over to her and I'm like, hey, look, this ain't working. My neck is hurt like bad. I think something's broken. And she was like, well, let's go call your mom. So we walked back to the locker room, and on the way, this is the one time my mama said that she had just happened to be by the stadium and stopped and was going to watch me practice. She had never done that. She'd always drop me off and then come back and pick me up.
Wow.
But this one time she was going to watch me, or at least be there. And anyway, so we're walking back to the locker room. We just so happened to walk by her car. She was sitting there. She was like, hey, what's wrong? At this point, I'd already taken my helmet off and my shoulder pads. I was like, hey, my neck hurts like really bad. And so I go and change and get my clothes on. We load up in the car and we go to leave. She goes to take me to the hospital in Hazelhurst, and they tell me to get a number, and we're sitting there. And like the whole time, my neck's just killing me. And it's like unbearable pain. So my mom was like, screw this, I ain't waiting on nothing. She gets real mad because, once again, she told her that I'd hurt my neck, told us to take a number or whatever, It happens, okay? She gets mad, we leave. She's like, we'll go to the next town. We load up, we come to Douglas. She goes inside, she's like, don't move. She goes inside and tells them they come out with a wheelchair. Wheel me back. And they did the x-ray. And I knew something immediately was wrong because they let me get up out of that wheelchair onto the x-ray table. But after the x-ray was done, they wouldn't let me move at all. Mm-mm. They walked in there and they was like, all right, Mr. Burkett, here's the thing. Don't move. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I'm laying there for a second, and a few more of them come in there and they're like, we're going to pick you up and put you on this bed, okay? Okay, cool. They put me on the bed and then they immediately rolled me right into the ER. At this point, I'm oblivious to what's going on. I don't know, but I know my body hurts. And they're asking me 5 million questions. And there's people all around. They're cutting my clothes off, pants, underwear, everything. I'm butt naked like the Lord had me when I came in this world, And I'm like, goodness. And the doctor comes in and he says, so I got some news for you. He's like, you broke your neck. And I was like, yeah, whatever, Mm-hmm. He was like, no, son, you don't understand. He said, 85% of people that suffer the injury you have are paralyzed or dead. Like, I recommend you not move. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm 16 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could do anything in this world.
Yeah.
But I tell you what I did do, and that was be very still.
Yeah.
So the doctor tells my mama, she says, okay, we're gonna load him up, we're gonna take him to Savannah, we're gonna transport him to Savannah. There's nothing we can do for him here. And that's when I was introduced to what they call a stretcher. I don't know if you've ever been on one.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy, they pick me up, put me on a stretcher, and get me prepared to transport me to Savannah. And at this point is where my memory gets hazy with that, because there's they medicate you
Yeah.
when they transport you, and praise God. I remember us stopping on the way from Douglas to Savannah. I'd come to, and we'd stopped at a gas station or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my mama got out, went to go into the store, and I told the tech, the paramedic guy that was there, I was like, what are we doing? And he was like, we had to stop. And I was like, no, just don't worry about that, just keep going, buddy. He was like, well, we're waiting on your mama to get back in. And I was like, nah, buddy, just go. She'll meet us down there, you know. And then I went out again, and when I came back to, I was in the emergency room in Savannah. At this point, there's people all around me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where my life with Christ begins. Obviously now, hindsight being 2020 and knowing what I know, it began even before conception, right? But
yeah.
This is where I was truly introduced. So to fill you in, 2 weeks prior to me breaking my neck, I was laying down in bed. And I remember praying very, very vividly. I remember I didn't have a purpose. I was lost. And I knew I was lost. Things in my family were crazy. Relationships were in and out. I was just lost. And I remember laying down one night. Once again, I knew about God. I just didn't know God. I remember praying. I said, Lord, show me a sign. Whatever you want me to do, just show me a sign of something. Now I know. Be careful what you ask for, because you'll get it. So 2 weeks later, I ended up breaking my neck. Here I am laying on a stretcher for 6.5 hours. They wheeled me into the ER in Savannah, and I've got nurses all around me. There's 3 or 4 doctors. I mean, they're just it's loud. Like so many people trying to check me out. They're checking my spine just to make sure I ain't got any other spinal injury. It's just, you name it, it's going on. And through all of the things that I've been through in my life, I've never felt more lonely than that moment. Because here I am surrounded by God knows how many people and all this noise, but I felt tremendously lonely. Like it come over me more than anything. Like I said, I've never felt it any other time in my life. And it clicked. Without him, ain't nothing. Just loneliness. And that was God calling to me the first time. Mm-hmm. I know it without a doubt. So I go through all of that. Finally, they send me home with a brace. It ends up not being just a brace. It's not healing, so I got to go back. Now, this whole time, my mom was working, not necessarily a dead-end job. She's struggling financially, you know, and we're just barely getting by, so it's all on her, you know. And we're going back to Savannah every 2 weeks, every week. And through all of this, I developed a bond with my mama that I never had. My mama told me when I was very young that by the time I was 18, I'd be in prison or dead, you know, and I just wouldn't amount to anything. This was what I grew up as, you know. Mm-hmm. But during this moment, I guess it was not only for me, but for her as well, because we had developed a relationship that we had never had. You go from being able to play sports, exercise, go and do what you want to do, to literally your mother has to shower you again. You know, it humbles you as a male, but also just as a person in general. And being that close to almost dying really changed my life. Now, there's been a lot of moments in my life where I've almost died. Several car wrecks. Had a couple people try to pull knives on me. Been shot at. Been hit a couple times. Got a couple scars to prove, you know, the rebelliousness of life. But it was all a lonely life. This is something that at this point I was carrying a scar that nobody could see. I had hidden so much, always making people laugh, always trying to be the funny guy. And the reality is, if I was being funny, then you were smiling. And if the other person's smiling, then you can't ask me why I'm hurt. Right? Like if you're smiling and you're laughing, you're not asking questions.
Yeah.
You know. And so I go through all of it with my neck, and I'm trying to take it with stride. You know, I'm trying to uplift everybody. I'm making nurses laugh in the hospital and stuff like that. That's just always been my nature, is just to make people happy. And a lot of things, you know, happened throughout that 4 months of my life. I ended up being in the brace for 4 months and get out of it, full bill of health, you know, able to do a lot of things, but there's still obviously certain restrictions. You know, I can't, I have basically partial nerve damage, and I'll have it for the rest of my life. So when my second vertebrae broke, it broke inward towards my brainstem. And so I was less than a millimeter away from death, is what the doctor told me. You know, cool, whatever, I'm 16, you know, I don't realize the severity of it. But once again, that's the first call. It only takes 2 for me. So we speed up, we get through all of that. Finally, you know, I graduate. There's a lot of things that happen in between, but once I graduate, I move out. Relationship with my mom and daddy still very, very rocky. I actually go 2 years without talking to my dad. Didn't really know a whole lot about his life. Nothing. I didn't even know he was alive for 2 years. And I'm doing my own thing, and I met a girl in high school, and we ended up getting married, you know, young love. That marriage falls apart. Around 19, I filed for divorce. We separate, you know, and it's an ugly divorce, you know, and this whole time I'm drinking, partying, having a good time. Then I start really looking for, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, right? Like I'm working different jobs. I've always worked my whole life, you know, but I need to find something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So we run into I run into a few things here and there, hit or miss work, you know. And I meet my now wife, and she lives in the Douglas Nichols area. That's where she's from. And we made our way over here. It's 2019, right at 2020. And find out about this air conditioning company that's hiring. My whole life, my dad's always told me, get in the air conditioning work. It's a guaranteed job. People always gonna want air conditioner, always gonna want heat, whatever. You know. And I was like, but I do it anyways. Yeah. Find out about it, so I, you know, reach out to them. Little did I know that several years later, that I would be where I'm at today. But that was slowly becoming the introduction, and the second call from Christ or God. So me and my wife, we were dating, but we ended up getting married now. We move over here full time. We're living in Douglas in the area. Started working at this air conditioning company, and it's A-Action there. It's John and Sheila, and I'm introduced to them, and at that time there was a different manager there. And, I'm still drinking on the weekends. And, I didn't realize it, and looking back, I never claimed to be an alcoholic just because of the fact I didn't drink at work.
Mm-hmm.
That don't justify anything. Because I would drink as soon as I got home from
Yeah.
work. But I would never drink at work. I always try to be a productive citizen, But the reality is, when I got home, I would drink. And it's not because there were marital problems or anything like that. I was the type of person, I enjoyed alcohol for the taste, I didn't like getting drunk. I didn't like being drunk. I didn't like the way my body felt. But I would go home and I'd drink, and the owner of this company and even the manager at that point, very, very religious people. They go to church, and my wife at the time, she was like, we need to start getting into church. And I'm like, go ahead. I'll be here when you get back.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, I'm telling her that, and I'm drinking, while I'm telling her that. And we go a couple times, it's nothing real severe, or like nothing that really draws me, It's just my ears were waxed over. And so things go on, life goes on, to where we start having kids, find out we're pregnant. That was a process to begin with. My wife still has endometriosis and PCOS and stuff like that. And so for us to even conceive was very difficult. And that's all my wife wanted in life, was to be a mother. And so we tried and tried and tried, and we struggled. And, she was taking medication, was going to the doctor, etc. And then finally, my wife just gives up. She's like, I'm done taking the medicine. I'm done with it. 2 months maybe after she quits taking it, we found out she's pregnant. And I was like, man.
Ain't that how it works?
We could have just done this to begin with.
Yeah.
Jesus. And I'll never forget, I remember calling my dad and telling him the news, because I was excited. And at this point, we had somewhat rekindled our relationship. We were just talking, me and my dad. And he said, well, it goes your life for 18 years. I was like, hey, that's what appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of, and looking back, like a lot of people would took that a bad way, but that's just mine and my dad's relationship, like great example, Jared, meeting Jared, he's he's a man of few words, but it's just, my dad, he's a very loving person. He talks, cuss up. I get a lot of my personality traits from him.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as emotions, my dad was hurt all his life, so he can't really teach me how to handle my emotions if he can't handle his.
Right.
And so that's kind of just how it was. That's how it always was. And so I remember him saying that, and I was like, man, appreciate it, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But life goes on. We have our oldest daughter, Brenda. She's born, and at this point, I'm still drinking pretty hard. Prior to, I completely missed it, but I just thought about it. But prior to this, mine and my wife's relationship, going through my divorce, I developed a cocaine addiction. So once again, I enjoyed the way it made me feel, but I like the smell of it, the way cocaine smells. It's hard to explain to, like people think I'm joking, but it's got a distinct smell, and I enjoy that smell.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to kick the habit right before me and her got together, me and my now wife, on my own, just got to where I was tired of it. So I'm a smoker. I've developed a cocaine addiction and was able to kick it. I still drank. I now am married and got a child. I'm working at this air conditioning company, and the owners are very religious. They talk about God all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, it's getting thick. Every time I would say anything about alcohol, John, the owner, he would just kind of brush it off, and he's like, man, I could tell you many stories of, bad times I've had when I was drinking. I was like, yeah, well, I just had those times yesterday, It's like, but it goes on and on, and finally it gets to the point where my daughter asked me one day, because she used to talk about it. Like every time I drank, she'd be like, Daddy got this bill. Mm-hmm. And she would name it, specifically. She would say beer. I could be drinking a glass of water that was clear, and she'd see it was beer. Mm-hmm. And it got to where not only that, but every birthday party, every Christmas, Thanksgiving, you name it, every get together that I would go to, I was the only one drinking. Mm-hmm. And I was known that if I'm coming, I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And once again, it didn't click at that point. I didn't realize it. And then one day my wife said, baby, you an alcoholic? I was like, nah. She's like, yeah. I was like, well, I don't have the shakes. Uh-huh. She was like, how long has it been since you drank? I was like, about 15 minutes ago. Like, baby, you're an alcoholic. I brush it off, whatever. December 10th of 2024, I think. I go outside and sitting there by the fire drinking by myself, like always. And I was like, man, I'm done with these things. That's it, So I give it up. This whole time I didn't know what God's calling. I couldn't tell it. It got to the point, keep in mind, I drank a case a day. But it got to the point where the taste just wouldn't satisfy me no more. And then I met Caitlin, and you had started somewhat, I would call it a Bible study. It didn't start out as a Bible study. It was more of just a get together and let's talk about the Lord kind of thing, But you had started that within the company, and there's a lot that I'm leaving out, but there were a lot of days where I would come in and me and you would talk about the Lord, and I'm supposed to be at work, but I'd be in the office talking, and I had so many questions, and I've always been a very curious person. But you had invited me one day. I think I was out of town or something. You had invited me. It's like, hey, Tuesday we're doing a Bible study after work. I'd love for you to join. It's on Zoom or whatever. And I think I was doing out of town work or something at that time. But I remember pulling it up and being involved in it. And that was God calling me the second and final time. Not saying you called me, but right. That was God calling me the second and final time. I know that now because I can see it lay out. Once again, hindsight's 20/20. So I started attending these Bible studies pretty frequent, and I start leaning more towards videos that didn't have a lot of cussing in it, and what's known as secular music. I started listening to a little bit more Christian involved music, podcasts, service or sermons and stuff like that. Trying to wrap my head around this thing called Jesus and salvation and Christ. I remember once again, I wasn't around God all my life, but but I was around church and knew about him. I remember praying one night. I was like, Lord, kind of guide me and put me where you want me to be, and just give me purpose. And I'd come to the point at the company where I was working at with A Actionaire, to where I didn't feel like I was truly fulfilling what I needed to do, and not in the aspect of work, but just purpose. I felt like I was running in circles. I felt like I was chasing an endless road, almost like I was stuck on a treadmill. So I prayed about it, and at that time I didn't know what it was, but it was God revealing to me that it was time, for me to move on. It was time for me to be put in the position that I needed to be put in for that final call to be received. So I pray about it, move on about my day, and then the opportunity comes up for me to move on to another company. Still do air conditioning work, but I moved to another company, and the same thing. It's a faith-based company. The owner's a preacher, and literally from day one all the way a year later, all he talks about is the kingdom and Christ. And the very first 2 weeks I was there was literally like a verbal baptism. I had never heard nor experienced that much scripture in my life. And so I was like, man, I gotta see what this thing's about, because it's eat this man up. Everything in his life is eat up with Christ. Something's wrong. I got to see about this. So he invites us to church, and we start bouncing around church to church, kind of just trying things out, This whole time I'm praying, like, just give me purpose, give me purpose, give me purpose, because once again, I've lived my entire life with no purpose. Chase drugs, alcohol, being rebellious in every way that you can without no purpose. So finally I'm captured, right? I go to church and I meet up with conviction. I meet up with all of the wrongdoings that I've done. So I go to the altar. That's what they say, church, Come to the altar, we'll pray for you. I'm like, buddy, you're going to be here a while. So I go down there, and as soon as I kneel down, like I was poured onto the steps, because I melted, and he ended up getting saved in all of it, and found my home church now. There's been a lot of with Christ there comes wisdom. Walking with Christ, you become more wise. And I've been saved a year now, and this has been by far the wildest ride I've ever been on in my life. Beats any cocaine I've ever done, beats any alcohol I've ever drank. It's beat any wild night at the river. It's beat any wild night running from the game warden. It's the wildest ride I've ever been on. And the truth is, the reason it's been such a wild and crazy ride is it's all been because of the scars that nobody can see. So, drinking, smoking, I don't smoke cigarettes, I don't drink. I've basically been delivered of everything. All of the things that I struggled with, all of my addictions, I've been delivered from. The one thing that I struggled with, and I can proudly say I'm delivered from, was the inner scar. And that scar was things the trauma, essentially, that had happened with my parents. and my childhood. I have been able to reach out to my parents and basically tell them I forgive them. Mm-hmm. I had all this anger built up toward them because of everything that had happened. I felt like my childhood was taken from me. But now that I'm a father of two, technically three, but blood-wise, two daughters, I'm given more wisdom once again. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. It's one of my favorite verses in the whole Bible. But I've been given wisdom. My parents were literally doing everything they could. I don't know about you, but we only get one life on earth. And there ain't no redos. You can't restart. So my parents had no clue what they were doing. And they were lying when they said they knew what was going on.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah.
The reality is they had no clue what they were doing.
Yeah.
We had a good life, me and my brother. It was rocky, and there was a lot of not necessarily disappointments, but there was a lot of heartache. But we had a really good life compared to most. I was able to, through prayer and reflection and scripture, I was able to reach out to them and forgive them. Now, whether they receive it or not is that's okay. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, I personally was able to reach down. And it takes a lot. It does, because I'm currently knocking on the door 30. So we'll say 29 years of my life was filled with hate, was filled with anger. I've got to change that in 1 year. Mm-hmm. It's real hard to do. But because of God's grace and knowing that no matter what, my parents loved me. They did all they could for me. Maybe not necessarily the right thing at that right moment, but I promise you I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. I've made a lot of mistakes as a parent. I've made a lot of mistakes as an adult, okay? The reality is, once again, this is my first time in life. This is my first time being the age that I am. This is my first time doing any of these things, so if I want to be judged kindly, then I better judge kindly. Mm-hmm. But if I also want to be forgiven, I have to forgive those who have done me wrong. There's a lot can be said about a person that can go through anything in life, whether it be traumatic or not, and be able to walk away with a smile and a loving heart. Because something I have to tell myself on a daily basis is, through all the things that I've done and now my walk with Christ, am I being the person that invited me to church the first time? Am I being the light that somebody may need in their time of darkness? Because I was in a dark place and somebody reached out their hand and said, hey, come to Bible study. And it starts from there. Now, as a saved man, not only am I leading my family, but I'm trying to lead everybody around me, trying to have the kingdom within inside me, and for it to be able to come out and to be able to spread my message, but once again, be able to be somebody's life. My story may not sound like much to some, but it was a lifetime to me. It was a long life. There was a couple nights there I was like, buddy, just let this in. I was almost like Elijah under the juniper tree. Lord, let me die. You know, like,
yeah.
I'm tired, boss.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Elijah, he sent an angel. He said to eat. And that was just him preparing me for the next journey in my life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at now. You know, it's the next journey and then the next journey. And trying to dive into any and everything I can. Pastor talks about it all the time. He's charging hell with a water pistol. I feel like I'm charging hell with a king water hose. But we doing it. Yeah. We doing this thing. Somebody turn the water on.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. You know, I guess that's the story of me.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it was, but
it's so good, man.
Here we are.
So good. I remember when it was around the time that I started the Bible study, and you know, I feel like when your season is over in the place that you're in, the grace kind of starts to leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I actually, when your season's over, the conditions will get so bad that you have to leave. Mm-hmm. It's to that point, and I genuinely and firmly believe that. Yeah. And that's where I was at. My season was over, and it had got to the point. I love everybody at that company. Even to this day, I still, you know, if there's anything anybody there ever needs, you can call. But it was getting to the point to where there was hatred starting to build. Mm-hmm. And there was anger starting to build, not necessarily towards any individual. It was just, my season was over. Yeah. And I had held on and held on and held on and tried to justify. And I'm not saying this by any means necessarily like that it was bad. It was just my season was over. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful because, you know, as we speak, it's springtime, kind of starting to somewhat transition into summer. We have a garden plant. I love planting a garden. I love tending to a garden. It can be hard work, and sometimes my wife questions it, you know. We're doing a stupid garden. Anyways, I love it. But doing a garden, you learn about the seasons. You have to. You have to know. You have to be able to keep up with the weather. You also have to keep up with the time of the year, because you know if you miss your little window to plant, then by the time it's harvest, it'll be too hot. It'll wilt. You know, there's a number of things that can go wrong. So I see that being applied in life now. Right now, as we speak, this season is one of change. Springtime, you know, obviously everything's changing weather-wise, but also see there's a change in growth. So the church that I attend, that you know of, that we're averaging crazy numbers, right? 3, 4, almost 500 every Sunday morning. Wow. Which is, you know, it's more than my hometown.
It's a lot. Yeah.
But even our youth. So our youth is averaging Wednesday nights, you know, we're 50 head, 50 plus.
Yeah, that's a big deal on Wednesday too.
It's a huge number. Yeah. The reality is, it's not the church. Mm-hmm. It's the move of God. Right. It's the hand of God. And right now, and that's also too why I'm grateful for that change in that season, because it's like God's making a move. And I'm on board. I'm part of it. I'm not blinded by the earth and the world and earthly things. You know, I'm able to see it. And it's funny because I recall a time, going back to the story there, where when I first met you, you were going through what I now know is part of your testimony. But I remember seeing you speaking at church and stuff like that, and I was like, man, that's a woman of God right there. Little did I know you were in the bottom of the trenches, like fighting for your life. And now I see it the same as me. I've had people, especially right when I was getting saved, and my early, I had a really good friend of mine. He called me. He was like, "Hey man, you on that Jesus thing, right?" I was like, "Yeah, bro." He's like, "Man, you'll pray for me real quick."
Yeah.
And at this point, but the only person I prayed for was a bowl of cereal. You know what I'm saying? And that was in my head. And he wanted me to pray for him over the phone. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Lord," I said a real quick prayer in my head. I was like, "Lord, just let me be that vessel." Mm-hmm. And I prayed for him. And all I remember is just opening my mouth. I don't even remember what I said to him, but it was well received. And he was all choked up about it. And he was like, "Man, thank you, man. I appreciate that, cuz I needed it. That's what I needed to hear." And as soon as I got off the phone, I broke down crying. And I was like, I needed that prayer more than he did, you know, because here I am struggling with not only my faith, but buddy, I'm in my trenches right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm doing good enough or what, you know, like what's going on, you know. Yeah. And I see that now. So it's crazy how, once again, I saw you going through that. Here you are talking and telling your story, and I remember saying, "Man, that's a woman of God right there," and that was part of my my shift, I guess you could say. And now looking back, you know, I'm the type of person, I have to surround myself with those people. I have to surround myself daily. Mm-hmm. I have people tell me now, because I'm a big advocate for going to church. And I have a lot of people, "Man, you ain't got to go to church to receive God." And that is the truth.
You got to have that village, though.
You don't have to necessarily physically be in church you don't. God will find you. But I hear people all the time, "Man, I'm looking for the Lord." Buddy, he ain't lost.
Right.
Okay? It's the opposite. He's found. Mm-hmm. We found him. He is risen. The reality is you're lost. And he'll call you. Now, I'm a firm believer, like I said, in going to church. And this is why. So for me, okay, and I can only speak for me, if I was to go to church just on Sunday mornings, I can almost guarantee you that my salvation would be half of what it is today. Because of the fact, just like with drinking and drugs, I had to surround myself with those people to partake in it. Mm-hmm. And then once it became a hold of me, I didn't no longer need to be a part of that. Yeah. So I have to go to church. Wednesday, I have to go Wednesday evening to get fed. I have to go Sunday morning to get fed. I have to go Sunday evening to get fed. If there's a revival, I got to be there. If there's a men's breakfast on Saturday, I'm there, drinking coffee. Mm-hmm. If there's a men's conference for 3 days, I got to go. I've got to be locked in just as much as I can. I was loud for the devil. I've got to be even louder for Christ. I was making a bunch of racket when I was doing dope, drinking, being buck wild, crazy as a sprayed roach. I've got to be even louder for Christ. Yeah. And I see it. There's a lot of times, if we're not careful, our seasons will change and we'll blindly not look and see it. And then next thing we know, we're just being dragged along. Lost, not really paying attention, not really seeing what's going on, but we're thinking we're doing our best. The reality is our season's past, and it's no longer prosperous. It's no longer beneficial for your ministry. And I feel like so many people get caught in that moment. So many people get stuck in that of, they've got such, they have amazing attributes or abilities or gifts that they could bring, but they're so lost because they think that this one season, okay, it was profitable one time, let me stay here. Mm-hmm. The reality is you have to brush your feet and move on sometime. Which is funny because I've watched with you, like I've seen change in like your direction. And it's been a reflection for me because mine's the same way. I try to tell anybody if you don't know where you fit with the church, best way to find out is to go. I hear it all the time. Well, this church bother. I don't like going there because I get it. Reality is, if you can't get along with them here, how you gonna get along with them in eternity? Might not be the church.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Like
sometimes it's you, baby.
yeah. I mean, have you thought about that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's you.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I'm learning, because all of this is new to me. Our worship leader at church asks me all the time, because I love music. That's another thing. Part of my story is just music. I play guitar, I sing, and he asked me about this band or this one or that one. And it's all gospel music or new age music or whatever. And I'm like, but I don't know who that is. And he's like, you mean tell me you don't know about so and so? I'm like, yeah, but I can tell you who Merle Haggard is.
Yeah.
Tell you who Don Williams is too. And they're like, man, you was out there, huh? Like you don't really know anything about church. You don't know anything. No, I don't know. But what I'm learning is, don't matter where you go to church, just like work, just like anything else, games, whatever. People are very picky. The reality is there was only one gospel. It's in the Bible. According to the Bible. But so many people interpret things so many different ways. And what I'm learning is, you will never be right. You won't. You could go and pray for 50,000 people, change 20,000 people's lives, have them saved, give them their hearts to the Lord. You'll never be right.
Won't be there.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's like the church that I attend. We have large numbers, very large numbers. The reality is, though, it's never enough. Those people may go, but the reality is, if you don't have it inside you, that's just a building. I imagine there's several people out there that, I went to this church and man, they cast a judgment on. Listen, I've smoked crack off of a Sprite can with some ashes in a church parking lot before. Okay, I'm not bragging, but I've done it. The reality is, the church itself, people are what hurt you.
Exactly.
Hurt people hurt you. People that haven't been delivered, people who haven't truly given their heart and all of its desires to Christ. See, you can be saved and still lost. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
I tell any and everybody I can, if you don't like the church you go to, please, dear God, pray first and find another church. Just go. I used to do it, I don't know about you, but back when I drank, I used to bar hop. I don't know if you ever done it. You go open up a tab here, drink 4 or 5 beers, and leave from there when it got a little weird, move on to another bar. And you do that, especially on the beach. You jump from bar to bar to bar.
Yeah.
It's a horrible analogy here, but I did the same thing with church. I would go to one church 2 or 3, 4 Sundays in a row, just to kind of get a feel for it, pray about it, and ask God, kind of guide me here, God, I'm a simple man, and He would. We'd go to that church, not necessarily feel anything, or we would, and then when we went back, it didn't seem like a fit for us, so we would go to another church. Same thing, we would go and attend it and, meet the people and talk and pray, and once again, you just get this feeling of like, okay, well, this ain't for me, and then move on to the next one. And something that has done for me personally was it's only increased my ministry. It's only increased the people and connections that I have. Great example, we don't go to church together. But I could reach out to you about a scripture. You could reach out to me about a scripture. Or, hey, I was sitting there reflecting about something, and, I want to reach out to you about it and see what you thought about it. Or great example, this podcast. Hey, doing this podcast, blah, 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 It's only increased the connections of people that know Christ.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's the most important goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the churches, everybody acts like they're in their own little church. It's like their own little world, but we're all still supposed to be a community.
We're all connected. Yeah. I mean, the church is not one building.
Yeah.
The church is us collectively.
Yeah.
Jesus was the church. Like it's all connected. It's all one big community. And like I said, I tell people all the time, because that's the number one thing. Like I know several people that's their number one excuse, and that's what it is. It's just an excuse. So and so is gonna judge me. Mm-hmm. Listen, let me tell you something. I've seen some. Since I've been saved, since I've been going to church, I've seen some things. I've seen snotty nose, it just ugly crying.
Mm-hmm.
But
I've been that ugly cry.
I have too. And then when you come up from it, and it's almost like you're on a 4-day bender, you look around and everybody's, hey, come here, and they want to hug you, and you're over there.
What just happened?
What?
Yeah.
If it's not like that at your church, you may need to pray about it. Maybe you want to evaluate where you're at.
Yeah.
Because, once again, if people are judging you inside the church, then obviously they're wrong. Right? Because you don't go to church for judgment. You go to church for deliverance.
Yeah, it's a hospital.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what it is. It's a lifeline for somebody that needs it.
Yeah.
That's the church that I attend. I mean, there's just so much going on within the church as far as we got a rehab, and we have a women's ministry, men's ministry, jail ministry. I mean, there's just so many different things, and they're talking about a school. I mean, it's just it's amazing at all the things that they're getting involved in, right? But even with all of that, it's not enough. To go back to what I was saying, there's always people out there, and this it kind of goes along with basically my life story. No matter what I've done in the past, I was never enough kind of thing, and I struggled with that. But now I know that God, to Him, I'm all that I need to be. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like with this conversation here, I mean, I thought about it, when you asked me, and I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to say. I probably shouldn't have ate a Mexican buffet before I came. Like all these things, you know. But I prayed about it. And whether it's beneficial or not to somebody, it was beneficial to me. Amen. And I think I do a lot with the youth on Wednesday nights, and we try to get involved with the youth more and more, me and my wife. And one of the girls there, she was talking about how, and she got upset about it. She cried about it a little bit. She got upset because I'd asked her, I was like, well, what is a vision that you have? What's something that you would want, before the year's end? Mm-hmm. And she said the courage to walk up to somebody and tell them about Christ. And she broke down. As soon as she said it, started crying. And I was like, listen, that's great. I am terrified of people. But I get on stage and play the guitar at church in front of 400 head people. Mm-hmm. I have to close my eyes a lot. But I don't do it for me, and I don't do it for the glorification of being on stage. Right? Mm-hmm. I can sit in my bedroom and play the guitar and be perfectly fine. Right. Especially if it's for God. It's like I told her, pray, but also do it. You'll be surprised. Once again, I'm terrified of people, but I work with people every day.
Yeah.
And I've been told I have the gift of gab, whatever you want to call it. I'm very talkative. I'm a very likable person, but the reality is you never know until you try. My dad years ago used to tell me, and it's something that I've carried with me all my life. You go into something with negativity or negative mindset, you'll get negativity out of it. But if you have a positive mindset and a positive outlook, you'll try your best to get something positive out of it, no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. Now that I look at it as a father and also a man of Christ, if I go into something with the love of God, the love of Christ, and with the intentions of spreading His gospel, it'll be good. It's not my job to get them into heaven.
Yeah.
Right? That's God's job. All my work is just to let them know about it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I can do. See, this stuff is good. This thing they call Jesus is good.
Mm-hmm.
You about that Jesus stuff? Like my buddy told me? Yeah, man, I'm about that Jesus stuff. It's good. Our pastor talks about it all the time. And, it's like a little boy's custard. It gets gooder and gooder. And it does.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it'll put you in places, and that's something I was telling her too. Is be careful, be cautious of what you pray for, because you'll get it. A great example. I got mine in the way of a broken neck and permanent nerve damage, etc. But I got it. But God knew that was the only way I was going to get the message, because I'm hard-headed.
Yeah.
But it's like I told her, if you pray for that, sometimes it'll put you in a situation that you've never been in, you've never experienced, and you won't have any other choice but to lean on Him.
Mm-hmm.
But know, just like with Peter in the boat, He'll bid you come, He'll bid you go. When He says come, walk straight to Him, don't look around.
Yeah.
You'll get to it, and you'll have that ability to walk across that water. But if you look away, it's a long way down.
Yeah.
Jesus, Lord. You imagine?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Something I was thinking about too is, and it's kind of maybe off subject, but for Paul to become Paul, he was originally Saul.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this bright light, and he was blinded. Well, the part that sticks out to me about that story the most is Ananias. Right? He had to go pray. He had to go put hands on him. And he had a vision to go pray for this man named Saul. And he even argued.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the Saul. You talking about that one?
Yeah.
The one killing you?
Yeah.
But what came to me in the story was what was going through his mind as he was waiting for him to show up. All he knew was of a man that was prosecuting and killing Jews.
Yeah.
That's it. And here God is sending him. Pray for him. Oh my God. But I thought about it in the sense, like, are we the Ananias to a drug dealer on the side of the road? Or a homeless man? Mm-hmm. Or what some people consider scary, but a big biker dude? Or a violent person covered in head to toe tattoos and piercings and just looks demonic?
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. Obviously, he goes through with it. He goes and prays for it, puts hands on him, and the scales fall. Things like the scales fall off his eyes, Paul's eyes. What different are we to him? It's not. Obviously, God tells you to do something. I would think, he says that my sheep will know me by my voice. So I would think that if he tells you, go and pray for this person, it'll be a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. But as I say that, I reflect on multiple times where it wasn't this audible voice. It wasn't this like thunderous voice come across the way. But he spoke to me and was like, hey man, go talk to that lady over there. Yeah. And I was like, nah, nope. Ain't gonna do it.
Was that really the Lord?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of like, I'll throw up on the inside. And I'm like, should I? And then by the time I should go and say something, they're already gone.
Yeah, I'm bad about that.
And then I go home and I'm like, man, I'm just probably going to go to hell now because I disobeyed God.
One time I was driving through the Walmart parking lot and there was this man in the parking lot and he had this long curly hair and I felt the Lord tell me how much he loved that person. And I was like, man, that person needs to know that. And the Lord was like, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh man. I said, you know what, Lord, if I see him again next time I go to Walmart, I'll know it was you and I'll do it. Obviously it was him if, you know.
And that's what's crazy is like,
I saw the man at Walmart. The very next time I went to Walmart and I still didn't talk to him.
Listen, I have that happen all the time.
Leave.
But I'll tell you something that like I said, I've really been testing myself. Mm-hmm. Through a lot of like great example, playing music, my job, I test myself in a lot of ways. Like I push myself for excellence. I try to be the best that I can be. And I try to do a lot of things, not necessarily to the best of my abilities, but to the best of my abilities, right? Mm-hmm. Like I try to push myself, but there's a lot of people that go further than I do, okay? I'll just be honest. But here recently, I've prayed about it a pretty good bit, and I'm trying to test myself more and more, push myself to go to that person and say, hey, look, God loves you today. Just because of the fact, once again, there was a moment, there was a time, several times, where if somebody would have done that to me, I probably would have had a different life. Mm-hmm. But not only that, there were several times where people did do that. It brought me through those moments.
Yeah.
I mentioned my great grandmother. That was those moments. God was using her to be there at those certain times. And I got to be with her towards the end of her life, the last probably 6 months of her life. We talking Jimmy Swagger, just full blown. That's all she watched every single day. Mm-hmm. Prayed, just a very, very powerful woman, walk in faith wise. And once again, she was that relief. And now I have to test myself to be that relief. Because you never know.
Yeah.
I walked around with a scar that I had on my heart and nobody knew it. You can probably somewhat tell just by my behavior. But the reality is nobody knew. There's a lot about my story that like my wife didn't know until here recently. And once again, you never know. You never know because of the fact God uses people in such mysterious ways, and it's almost selfish of me to ignore those calls. Like we cut up and joke about it, but the reality is that person may have been right there at the end.
Yeah.
What if that's what that person was looking for? Was God just, if you're out there, just tell me.
Yeah. And
he was reaching through you to be that person. And because of our flesh, we fought it. It was like, no, I'm out good. I ain't gonna did it. Mm. But the reality is, once again, that's something I've been testing myself a lot on, is just following through with it, because something very early in my walk that happened was I would get to where it just felt like a frog in my throat, like in service and stuff. And I'd lock eyes with this person, and it's not that I wanted to talk to them, because I did. But the harder I fought it, the worse it would get. It would just build and build and build, and almost where like I thought I was going to throw up.
Yeah.
And I'd walk over to them, and then I'd just start talking, and they would break down and cry, you know, and they were like, "Man, that was well received," or whatever, you know. The reality is, if I would have fought it and just went home, then they wouldn't have received what they needed to hear or whatever, you know. And I got to where I stopped doing that. I stopped going to those people. I'd swallow. I'm good. You know, you're not going to throw up. And now it doesn't happen at all.
Yeah.
And I see that as this, you know, God will use you and use you and use you until you stop it, not Him.
Yeah.
And once again, that's why I test myself, because at the end of the day, where I'm at now, I just want to be a vessel. That's it. I've lived a great life. It's been a wild ride. It's been a long, crazy, up and down. But it's not about me. It's more or less about my kids now. But my priorities are different now. My life is more for Him and to be a servant of Him. But also, once again, just to be a vessel for anything that He would want me to do or say. And that's all I can hope for. It's the best you can hope for, really.
Yeah.
I would think.
Absolutely. That was so good.
I don't feel like it was.
Man, that was a word. Well, he's preaching to me, I know that.
Yeah, I must needed that coffee right there, ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
Throat was getting a little dry.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was so good, James.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this, even though I just sat here and talked.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was much needed for both parts.
Yeah.
I feel like the dog really received it.
The dog definitely did.
Yeah.
She's waiting on us to finish so she can get some lovin's.
She's staring, for sure. Staring like, because I'm tired of it.
All right, guys. Well, thank y'all so much for watching. We will see you next time.